What lies are you believing about yourself? You doing the same thing I did for years? I used to believe I was the outcast, the reject. I used to believe I was an addict. I used to believe I was a piece of trash. I used to believe that nobody loved me. I used to believe nobody cared. I used to believe so many different things. Um, and a lot of that stemmed from lies, stemmed from things that I told myself. Uh, my story is filled with it really begins with things that I didn't understand growing up as a kid, and that's what happens to a lot of us. Growing up as a kid, we have these experiences and we have these things happen that lead us to believe things that aren't true, that lead us to believe lies about ourselves. Like my dad didn't know how to love, my dad didn't know how to be a father, so I wound up believing that I was not a good son, I was not a good person, I shouldn't have been born. um, I wasn't good for anything, I'm a reject. So many different things that I believed, all because my dad didn't know how to be a dad. And it took me a long time to shake a lot of them lies off, to change the way I thought and felt about myself. A lot of us go through experiences where we go through the same thing, where we start believing lies about ourselves. And what happens is, in different situations, through things like abuse, physical abuse, when we were abused as a kid, whether physically, verbally, or sexually, and then our parents turn around and tell us they love us and stuff like that, we believe the lie that that is love. And then we get stuck in these relationships where we're stuck with people that treat us like crap, and we don't leave because we think that that's love. Or we're stuck in addiction because we don't believe that we're good enough to be saved, that we're good enough to get help, that we're good enough, that we don't believe that hope is out there because we think that there's no hope. I did that to myself. I believed there was no hope. I went to my first treatment when I was 17 years old. I was in there for 6 months. I relapsed 2 weeks before I got out, and that implanted a lie in my head that there was absolutely no hope for me, that there was that there was no hope. I was some special kind of addict. And it wasn't until about 8 years ago I entered into a program. Through a series of events, God gave me a job and He put me in working for this man who, just a whole long story of just how involved he was in recovery. And I didn't go there, I was led there. God led me there, and I ended up being in a position to be able to be blessed by these people that taught me the lies I was telling myself. And one of the things that I had to do was lie to myself. And I know that sounds kind of contradictory. I'd been believing all these lies, but I had to start lying to myself. I had to start telling myself the truth, but to me, it was a lie. I had to start telling myself, hey, you know what? There is hope. I'm not a bad person. I am a good dude. I've made a lot of mistakes, yes, but the things that I did and the things that happened to me didn't define who I was as a person in my heart. Because who I was as a person in my heart, like, I knew the things I was doing were wrong. I had pain about it. There was fear. All these things that were in me showed that I had a good heart. Because somebody that has a bad heart just doesn't care. They'll do bad things, do whatever they want, and they have no care, no fear, no worry, no nothing. They just go on about their life. But for people like you and people like me, we do these things that we don't want to do, and then we regret it, and we hate ourselves for it, and then that builds on the foundation. Builds up on top of the lie. I had to lie to myself, and I had to tell myself, and it took some time. It did take some time. I was in this program like 6 months, and it took a little while before I really started seeing the benefits of it. But I had to start telling myself these things. When I would screw up, when I'd make a mistake, I had to say, you know what, it's all right. I know better. I'm going to learn for this and move on. Whenever thoughts of self-hatred would come up, like I hate myself, I'd have to stop and say, you know what, no, I don't hate myself. I love myself. I'm a good dude. And even though I didn't believe these things, what would begin to happen in my life, because I was actually speaking truth into my life, I would start to see the fruit of it manifest. So when before I started doing this thing, when I would do something good, it would just be like, oh, you know what, it's whatever. That's not who I am, whatever. When something good would happen in my life, I would tell myself I don't deserve this, I shouldn't have this. When I would do something good at work, I just wouldn't even care. I wouldn't even look at it. When I do a good job, people would tell me I did a good job, I wouldn't care. Like it's crap, basically. So after I started telling myself the different things, I would notice my mindset started changing. Whenever I would do something good, I would begin to be proud of it. Not like in an arrogance. I would have a happiness inside, like, man, yeah, I did that. That's awesome. When I would make right decisions, I would be happy. I'd be proud of myself. Whenever people would give me compliments, I still struggle with that to this day. Though compliments is still something I struggle with. But when people would compliment me and tell me things, like it wouldn't negatively affect me. I wouldn't put up this wall and be like, no, that's not me. You don't know me. I'm a piece of trash, whatever. People would say it, and I would believe it, and it really started to change the outlook I had on life. So, life is still life. Life still life. Things still happen. Things still go wrong. But now, instead of like, I used to run, I used to say, you know what, this is my life. I'm going to run from this. Whenever a problem would come up, I would run. Um, in my addiction, I ran for my families. I ran for my kids. I did all kinds of horrible things. I just ran and I ran and I ran and I ran. And I would just give up. I wouldn't care. I'd be like, you know what? That's their fault for getting involved with me because they knew I was a piece of trash, or, that's just who I am. That's just what I do in my life. I cause havoc and da 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 da. But what began to change in me is that when I began to believe the things that I started to tell myself about myself, the way, I had a mother that always complimented me, and I started to believe what God said about me. I started to believe, hey, I'm not a thief. I'm not a liar. Yes, I've stolen. Yes, I've lied. Yes, I've done drugs, but that doesn't make me an addict. Yes, I've done all these things. I've struggled with addiction. I've been in and out of addiction, but that's not who I am as a person. I choose not to call myself an addict. Yes, I've been in addiction. Yes, I've been addicted to drugs, but I choose not to label and continue to speak that curse over my life. The same, I used to not be able to walk out of Walmart without something in my hands or my pockets. I used to walk out the front doors of Walmart eating food and drinking stuff that I just stolen, like, because it was a high for me. It made me feel good. But I chose not to label myself as that. I don't choose to label myself by my actions that I did in the past anymore. I don't choose to label myself. I don't choose to call myself that. And another aspect of that too is the people I'm around. I have changed the people I'm around, and I've changed the input that I allow to come into my ears, because when I was around friends and family that continued to be condescending towards me, that continued to talk, say, oh, you're this, you're that, you're just an addict, you're a piece of junk, or you're never going to change, or you're this and that. Of course I would never change, because I continue to allow that constant negativity, and that constant just degrading behavior to come into my ears, and I continue to believe it. I had to come to a point where I said, you know what, I got to change the people that I'm around, and I changed it. And I cut off the people that were talking bad to me. Cut off the people that had nothing good to say to me, that all they did was want to be critical of me, instead of speaking good into my life, instead of speaking, hey, I believe in you, I love you, I support you, you don't have to be like this, there is hope. When I began to make all them changes in my life, my whole life changed. My whole mindset changed. The way I thought about life and the way I saw life completely changed. And that's what we have to do. We have to change our people, places. We have to change what we put in here, and we have to change what we believe in here, for one. Sorry about the light, y'all. We have to make a decision to do that. We have to cut off the negativity, and we have to move forward in life. Um, when I did that, when I began to do that, my life changed, my mindset changed. Now, when I say my life changed, I don't mean my whole life changed, because life is still life. Life still happens. Being a man of God and a Christian and following God, you know, life is not perfect. Life is still life. Things are still going to come at you. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do things that are going to, like, hurt us, destroy our lives, destroy our families. Stuff happens. Things come up. But what happened is, instead of me saying, you know what, I'm no good, I'm running forever. You know what, I'm a piece of trash. This is what happens. I'm going to go on about my life. Um, Instead of, like when I would relapse, instead of just staying in it and staying gone for years and not caring, I fought. I knew there was better. I knew a better life was possible. I knew I was capable of doing better things in my life. I knew that there changes could be made. And I made the decision to stand up and fight. And even as recently as now, like I had a relapse not too long ago. I'm still trying to rebuild, but there's some very, very, very heavy struggles in my life. And there's things that have happened that I have had to set to the side for a little bit and get my head straight and go back at it and go fight for it, because I'm not I'm not giving up anymore. I don't want to give up. I love life. I love who I've become. I love who God has made me to be, and I'm choosing not to go back to that life. I'm choosing not to stay that way. And there's so many different things in life. Having somebody to compliment me about anything and just being able to accept it, like without anxiety, without fear, without rejection, coming up is awesome. Having somebody tell me you can do it without this coming up in here and telling me, no, you can't do nothing. You need to go sit down. You need to go on somewhere else. It's freaking awesome. My whole life has changed. The way I look at life has changed. The way I go at life has changed. Now, when problems arise, it's like I run headfirst into it. And yes, I may fall. Yes, I may slip and fall, but I get back up and I keep going. And that's not just me. Every single one of you that is listening to my voice that struggles with what I struggle with, it is possible for you. You just have to come. You just have to change the way you think. If you change, if you take the effort just to change the way you talk to yourself, sit back and watch the change after 30, 60, 90 days. The things that will begin to happen and your mindset will change. I promise you. I give you my word, because I am a living example of it. Like I say, I'm not a pastor, I'm not a preacher, I'm not a therapist. I'm just somebody who has lived it. I was in addiction combined total of about 20 years of my life. And I've watched my life change. And yes, I still have struggles, but the quality of life, the fear is gone. The quality of life is better, and just things are completely different. Um, Sorry, y'all, my dog is chewing up a box. But yeah, my life has completely changed and for the better. But yeah, I want to encourage each and every one of y'all. I'm sorry, y'all. I just bought this little microphone, and my dog's chewing up the box and the other pieces to it. So hello. But yeah, um, I love each and every one of y'all. If you feel like you're rejected, if you feel like nobody loves you, if you feel like nobody cares, there's people out there that care. You just have to believe it, and you have to let God bring them to your life, and they will change the way you think and change the way you feel. I hope each and every one of y'all have a blessed day. Um, Give me a subscribe, follow, like, whatever, please. I love y'all. Have a great day.